Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the March 22nd, 2016 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. It's my privilege to call this meeting to order. There are copies of our agenda on either side of the room on the twin shelves there. If you haven't already done so, please feel free to pick up a copy of our agenda and follow along with tonight's proceeding. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment, both with respect to items that are on tonight's agenda, as well as a segment which is under item 7 on our agenda tonight, which is devoted to public comments of a general nature. So if you have questions or comments of a general nature with respect to things that are not on our agenda tonight, that would be the point in time in which to come up and say hello. I would like to ask, as it is our proud custom to begin every meeting by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, for everyone present to please rise and join us in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. And I would now like to call for a roll call, please.
Commissioner Waldeck.
Here.
Commissioner White.
Here.
Commissioner Vitimo.
Here.
Commissioner Jose.
Here.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Barnett.
Here.
Mayor Tully.
Here. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 6, which pertains to minutes of past council meetings. We have one set of minutes to review and approve tonight. Are there any changes, questions, comments, or corrections to the March 8th, 2016 minutes of our regular council meeting? Hearing that there are none, I have a motion to approve.
Mayor Tully, I move to approve the minutes from March 8th, 2016.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Terrific, those minutes are approved. I'm going to pause from our regularly scheduled program in order to read an important proclamation that we have here tonight, and then also present it to Ms. Wanschneider, who's in the audience here tonight, representing the Daughters of the American Revolution, to receive the proclamation. The proclamation is in honor of the Vietnam War commemoration. Whereas the United States of American Vietnam War commemoration gives us the opportunity for all Americans to recognize, honor, and thank our Vietnam veterans and their families for their service and sacrifices during the Vietnam War, which took place from November 1st, 1955 through May 15th, 1975. And whereas over 9,000 organizations across America have joined with the Department of Defense as commemorative partners to honor our nation's Vietnam veterans, including the 105 chapters of the Illinois State Organization National Society Daughters of the American Revolution. And whereas this commemoration includes 9 million Americans, all of whom answered the call of duty, with approximately 7 million living yet today. And whereas March 29th was the last day that U.S. troops were on the ground in Vietnam, Veterans Affairs Secretary Robert A. McDonald has designated March 29, 2016 as a day to honor those who have borne the battle and to extend gratitude and appreciation to them and their families. Now therefore I, Martin T. Tully, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, do hereby proclaim March 29, 2016 as Welcome Home Vietnam Veterans Day in the Village of Downers Grove. And I would like Ms. Wanschneider to please come up, and I'd be happy to present this proclamation to you on behalf of those that we are commemorating. Hello, good to see you again.
Good to see you.
How are you?
This is Mary Kay Wilson. She's our regent.
How do you do? Nice to meet you. Pleasure.
She's the big
The big hoo-ah. Very good.
very small.
You're in the presence of- And there's a great color over there.
Very good.
Terrific, thank you. And if you would like to, don't have to, if you'd like to share a few words with our television audience.
Are
it's entirely
there
up to you.
any Vietnam veterans in the room? How about veterans in general? Oh my goodness.
They're all serving.
They're all serving. Yes.
As is their custom.
Yes, yes, they are.
So if not, no need to. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. That brings us right to item 7, which pertains to public comments of a general nature. As mentioned, this is the segment of the meeting. If members of the audience have questions or comments of a general nature with respect to items not on tonight's agenda, please come down to the podium, introduce yourself, and we would welcome hearing from you at this time. Hearing if there are none, We will move to item 8, which is our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Mayor Tully, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I second the motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to any of the items on tonight's consent agenda? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Fatimo?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Consent agenda passes unanimously. That brings us to item 9, our active agenda. We have one item on tonight's active agenda. Do I have a motion to grant, adopting a resolution, granting historic landmark designation for 5320 Benton Avenue in the Village of Downers Grove?
Mayor Tully, I move to adopt a resolution granting historic landmark designation for 5320 Benton Avenue as presented.
I second the motion as presented.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Well, I have one question or comment that I will save till after the vote, and that is I would like to present the certificate for the historic designation to the homeowners, Amy and David Gasson, who are here in the audience tonight, and ask them to step up in a moment. But let's not leave everyone hanging. Let's take the vote first.
I wonder how it'll come out.
What's
I
that?
wonder how it'll come out.
This suspense is killing me. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Fatimo?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, motion passes. Congratulations, you are the first new home to receive historic landmark designation under the amended Downers Grove Historic Preservation Ordinance. If I can invite Dave and Amy Gasson, the homeowners of the Air House, to please come up. I would be privileged to present you
I
with
move we
this
suspend the
certificate.
rule against applause.
Please, come on up front and center. Congratulations. Thank you. Congratulations. You get the whole certificate. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to ask you if you wanted to say anything. You don't have to, but certainly you've demonstrated yourself to be quite eloquent in your comments earlier. But I also noticed there's a few familiar faces in the audience from the Friends of the Edwards House, I believe, who I know obviously have done a lot in the community to support historic preservation. If I can indulge my colleagues a moment, if you'd like to come up for a picture with the Gassons, since one of our objectives and goals here was to continue to celebrate historic preservation, we want to make a big deal out of it. Yes, you do. Nice one, Bob. Nobody wants to stand up. Not official till Doug gets it. Congratulations once again.
Well, we won't take up too much time, but we do want to express our sincere appreciation for the support that you've shown us, Mayor Tully and commissioners. We also want to again thank staff for all of their hard work. It was truly a pleasure working with them, and again, we found them to be extremely helpful. We also want to thank Friends of the Edwards House Group and PDHA for all of their support, and last but certainly not least, our friends, neighbors, and parents that have also been very supportive. And we also hope that through all of this, some people have learned a little bit, and we've created some awareness about the American Foursquare and the Prairie Style. And I just feel the need to kind of say again that we are very interested in forming that thematic district, the American Foursquare thematic district. So if anyone out there lives in a Foursquare or knows someone in a Foursquare that might be interested in creating that with us, we would be happy to hear about that. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you, first of all, for helping us achieve the village's motto of preserving the balance between tradition and progress. And thank you as well for responding to the questions that you received last week about sharing your experience in this process under the new amended ordinance with us and providing us very detailed, thoughtful suggestions on how the process can even be improved further. Just wanted everyone to know that in response to inquiry from last week, the Gassens put together an email of suggestions on how, based on their own experience going through this process, we might improve the process even further, and we are grateful for that as well. So thank you very much to the extent that it helps others follow in your path. Very good. Well, that brings us to the end of our active agenda. Since there was only one item, I thought we could spend a little time on it. We'll move then to item 10, which is our first reading or our workshop agenda. This is where items are presented by staff for discussion and consideration by the council only. We don't take any action on these items at this point in time. We have 4 items on our first reading or workshop agenda tonight, and as is customary, I will invite our village manager, David Fieldman, to introduce the items or designate someone else to do so for him. Good evening.
Thank you, Mayor Tully. The first item is consideration of an economic development plan to enhance the sales tax base. This is a top priority action item identified by the Village Council. Its purpose is to increase the village's sales tax base and therefore its annual sales tax revenues. This plan was drafted in a partnership between the Economic Development Corporation and village staff. And this plan was based on the fine market research analysis and study completed by AECOM, really the foundation of this report. So tonight we'll have 2 presenters. Chris Brewer from AECOM will present his findings and analysis in the retail market, and then the president of the EDC, Michael Casa, will present the actual strategy that's found within this plan. Chris Brewer from AECOM will now present his findings.
Good evening, Mr. Brewer. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the hospitality. Again, back in December of last year, we were engaged by the Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation to complete a competitive retail alignment strategy. And it's a telling statement for myself. I hit my 20th year of consulting experience last year in August, and I think I've been talking about the Great Recession for the last 7, and that's really getting old. But the thing is, when we talk about retail, the reality is the recession transformed a lot of our retail markets, and we're still dealing with those consequences today. I would say the good news is we didn't see quite as many stores close last year as we did in 2009, but the fact is over the last 2 years we saw as many stores close as in 2009. And we have a lot of space that's occupied but available. So again, we're dealing with that undercurrent when we look at all of our retail markets. The stores that are trying to compete for our business are in flux at this point. I guess the good news is actual sales have recovered, in fact, quite strongly. It's one of those metrics that's well above our pre-recession levels. So again, we're spending our money, but the stores that are collecting that money are in flux and in change. I was hearing a story last week that they're now looking at Brooklyn as the next big place where new retail concepts are being incubated. So again, we're going to have to take some time to see how the retail environment adapts, but it is in flux. Again, talking about online retailing, I personally am horrified at the thought of drones delivering my packages, but again, omni-channel retailing is here to stay, but from a retail standpoint, we haven't really seen the stores change yet. So again, there's this broader undercurrent that we have to think about that we're only beginning to recover from. As I was telling Michael Casa, I'm relieved that I'm no longer talking about my top retail opportunities as being Aldi as well as emergency care clinics. Like, we're getting to a better world with retail. We haven't completely recovered yet, so it's an important piece of context. When we got into the study, I think we obviously focused on the strength of the community. Again, a lot of people talked about it as a bedroom community, but also as an important suburban employment center. And one of the key metrics we were surprised by was that since 2007, Downers Grove has surpassed Oak Brook as a suburban employment location. That's a big change to see over the last 7 years. More daytime employees in Downers Grove than in Oak Brook. Again, a big change over time. A lot of mention about, again, Downers Grove in terms of the express trains that get here. I took the express train to get here tonight. 25 minutes to downtown is an impressive benefit in terms of competition. So again, thinking about all these factors that come into play, what we were ultimately struck by from a retail standpoint was this community's being situated within a very significant core of income and potential retail spending, probably one of 2 or 3 areas in the whole region where we see dramatic capacity to spend retail. Again, we look out by Schaumburg as one of those areas. We look downtown Lincoln Park as one of those areas. I think we estimated more than $7 billion of potential spending in and around Downers Grove. And what that really means is we have a lot of retailers that want to be here. I think we already have a lot of retailers here. So it gets to, as we think about our community, how are we positioning for those stores that are at the end of their lease and need to reposition in a new space. Again, they're constantly looking to change formats and update. So how do we position for that? Those sorts of things matter tremendously in terms of a market that already has a tremendous amount of space. Again, as we talk about this trade area that covers sort of the east-west submarket, only 15% of about 525 million square feet in the region. That's 15%. So again, there's a lot of inventory in this area. One of the things I think we noticed about it is that in Downers Grove, a larger percentage is older. We built a lot of retail here in the 70s and 80s, and now some of that space is at a competitive disadvantage. You have a couple of projects in particular that are not really well positioned for what modern tenants are looking for. And that's a reality that we see in a number of markets. Again, older commercial corridors like Ogden, we see similar patterns elsewhere in the region, and we have to understand ways of being to deal with that. So again, looking at all of the metrics we've seen, I think one of the areas we looked at in terms of retail sales was automotive. And I think we saw a pretty strong recovery in automotive following the recession here, and we saw a little bit of a slowdown since then. So again, we talk about trends. We saw, again, a overall rate that slowed slightly, but still stronger than the region in terms of growth in retail in automotive sales. And again, we've had a number of automotive dealers come into the community in the last few years. So an important pickup for our community. Some of the market insights that we spoke to, again, I can't decide if it's trying to predict the great grocery store shakeout or the accidental oil price war they got into with Saudi Arabia. We wouldn't have predicted those things in 2014, but lo and behold, we have a very interesting conundrum in grocery stores right now. We have some empty Dominick stores, and I think there's some expectation of a further shakeout, but again, it's a significant change for our market in terms of what the grocery options were 3 years ago versus what they are today. And this community has seen some new grocery come in as well. So again, that's one of the markets that we noticed. I think to me, one of the real curiosities is the new Art Van opening. Again, a large format furniture store, a large enough store that I might expect other home furnishing stores to begin to locate around it, again, potentially building a cluster of home furnishings activity. So we might think about that from a cluster standpoint. Where would those stores otherwise locate to be proximate to Art Van? But again, by everything we've seen, a very successful store in terms of what it's done since it opened. So I always love to put a few charts in. I have an economist by training, and I always apologize for that in advance. But again, retail inventories, again, we have been building fundamentally less space in the last 5 years, well below average. So again, we aren't building space at the same rate that we were. And part of the problem is we don't have the same quality of anchors that we did pre-recession. Again, we need those anchor stores to drive the inventory, to drive the people to our shopping centers. So again, lack of anchors, lack of construction, tougher financing market as well. Again, millions of square feet. I think one of the surprises in the study was the amount of retail inventory available to us in Downers Grove, the third largest concentration of space, over 4 million square feet. Again, comparing favorably with a Bolingbrook or a Lombard, and more than Oakbrook, which is a surprising notion. But again, a lot of space available to us. Again, we would say a majority of that space is in an older format, which is important. But again, a lot of inventory to work with. And when we talk about our vacancy, this is ultimately a very important measure, and it speaks to, from my perspective, pretty positive environment. 5% vacancy in a community, again, well lower than other places that we're competing with, and that speaks in part to the hard work of people to try and get that space backfilled after what was a pretty cataclysmic period of time for retail. But again, a pretty competitive vacancy rate, if I might say actually a little bit low. So again, it speaks to how do we start to understand opportunities for new retail. And then one of the things we wanted to understand was our market share in terms of sales. Again, we have our typical retail categories, our overall trade area, and then Downers Grove and our share of those trade areas. You see the overall is about 17%. Again, manufacturing, agriculture, apparel are below average. But again, food, drugs, lumber, building materials well above average. So again, we start to think about our ability to sustain market share above what our resident base would support. It means we're pulling sales dollars into the community. What it begs to me, obviously we talk about some of these sectors like apparel, general merchandise. In some of those cases, we have to think about the right mix of stores to be able to compete compete in some of those markets. And again, there's a lot going on here, but we did want to track the store sales by segment over time, understanding which segments have recovered to a pre-recession level versus those that still have a ways to go. Clearly, some of our sectors are not doing as well, but you see the sort of food and restaurant sector, continued stable growth. The furniture and home furnishing sector is always interesting because we have a suspicion that it will grow for 2015. So again, looking at the 2015 data to see what that rate of growth should be with Art Van opening, again, should be a significant improvement. Again, understanding these sectors and how they're performing is important. I would say overall, doing reasonably well in terms of what some of the competition's been dealing with. And one of the last pieces, we did a retail pull factor analysis, which is to essentially look at per capita retail sales adjusted for income. And what this ultimately gets to is communities that have a combination of high income and lots of retail stores should generally have higher attractive power. You should expect to see people coming here to spend their money. And what this does is try to balance those sales in terms of income. So what we look at is that ratio being above 1. So if we have a segment where the pull factor is above 1, it means we're pulling dollars in as opposed to leaking them out to somewhere else. So again, we see our two sectors below average. Obviously, general merchandise and apparel are below 1, meaning we're losing dollars to somebody else. We see other sectors all solidly above 1. Our one declining sector overall, I believe, is I think it's the furniture one. But again, we expect that will improve with Art Van opening. So again, understanding this helps us understand our competitive position. Are we pulling? Are we drawing sales dollars in? Obviously an important perspective when we think about sales tax dollars driving city bottom line. So always important to understand how we're competing in these different sectors. We did take a hard look at the trade areas. I think the commonality in all of this is understanding our concentrations of space as well as our concentrations of anchor stores. So larger format stores that drive activity, always important. And then ultimately year build, particularly along Ogden, we have a lot of space that was built in a much earlier time. And again, thinking about how that space competes for modern tenants is not an unimportant question. Questions, comments?
And now I'd like to introduce Michael Casa, who will synthesize that data and findings into a strategy to increase our sales tax revenue.
All right, thank you, Mr. Brewer. We're going to take Mr. Cass's comments, and then we'll reserve our questions for either or both of you upon the conclusion of his sharing his remarks. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Casa.
Good evening, Mayor Tully and Village Commissioners. Michael Casa, President and CEO of the Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation, with offices at 5159 Vocal in downtown Downers Grove. Before I present a summary of the economic development plan to enhance the sales tax base, which you have a full copy of, let me thank a few people. Dave Fieldman, our village manager, Mike Baker, our deputy village manager, and Allison Deitch, our village performance manager, for all their hard work on this project. I also want to thank members of the EDC board that lent their expertise to this report. This project represents one of the best examples of the teamwork between the village and EDC staff. Finally, I also want to thank Chris Brewer of AECom. He was great to work with, and I appreciate that he took time to be with us tonight. Village adopted the long-range plan with the top priority action item on the sales tax base on September 8th, 2015. 5 weeks later, in mid-October, the EDC approved funds to retain a consulting firm to conduct a retail market study. The study would be used to support the creation of the sales tax enhancement plan. I want to start by talking about recommended retail segments for attraction and retention. The village and the EDC should attract retailers in the following segments. Automobile dealerships. This segment is the village's strongest generator of sales tax revenue and is the trade area's largest category. The village holds an 18.5% share in the trade area. Ogden Avenue remains a desirable auto corridor. The village and the EDC identify opportunities for auto dealers to work collectively to enhance Ogden Avenue as a destination for dealerships. General merchandise. General merchandise retailers such as Walmart, Target, and Meijer generate nearly $800 million in sales in our trade area annually, and the Downers Grove share is disproportionately small, under 6%. Downers Grove does not have a big box general merchandise retailer, which means that residents are going to other towns for general merchandise. This is at the top of segments to be targeted. Furniture and household goods. This category encompasses furniture and electronics primarily. Village's performance in this category slid after major retailers closed after the recession, but recent sales tax reports show that with the addition of Art Van, it is turning this into a future growth segment for the village. Drinking and eating restaurants. Retail sales related to restaurants remained relatively steady during the recession and continue to perform well in Downers Grove, with 17% of the market share of the trade area. An important target within this segment should be upscale restaurants near our hotels and office parks on Butterfield Road. And then drugs and miscellaneous retail, the last one. After the automotive category, Downers Grove's second best performing category is drugs and miscellaneous retail, where we have almost a 24% share of the market. Strategies for attraction and retention. This section presents recommended strategies for attracting and retaining retail segments, given the challenges identified in the SWOT analysis in the AECOM report. First of all, facilitate aggregation of land to create sites that meet retailer needs. The village should take an active role in overcoming the challenges of obsolete sites in major retail corridors. This can be done two ways. One, by identifying areas where property could be acquired and then working with developers and property owners to facilitate the acquisition. And number two, by actively buying, assembling, and selling land. In addition to facilitating private sales of existing sites to retail developers, the village can also consider acquiring land and assembling parcels that are then flipped to an identified buyer. Village acquisition of land should be used as a secondary option. Private sector transactions are the preferred option. Number two, make building and zoning entitlement process easy and predictable. Developers and retailers should feel confident that building and zoning review and approval process will be predictable and easy to understand. In addition, the village should consider rezoning properties that are identified for retail development but not currently zoned for such uses. Number three, consider providing financial assistance. The village should consider providing financial assistance to reduce the high cost of redeveloping sites that can attract sales tax generating tenants. Oftentimes, financial assistance pays for public improvements such as streets, traffic signals, and water mains. I will discuss specific tools in a moment. Number four, quantify and consider all benefits and revenue. The success of a redevelopment project should have multiple measures: increases in sales tax, home rule sales tax, taxable value of the property, and whether the project furthers other community goals, such as redeveloping a dilapidated site. And of course, the village should consider the costs and benefits and make financial assistance decisions on a case-by-case basis. Number five, prioritize efforts. The village and the EDC should focus on those large-scale retail projects that have a high potential of significantly increasing sales tax revenue, as well as continuing to facilitate smaller-scale retail projects when those opportunities arise. Number six, prepare a key focus area plan for 63rd and Woodward as part of the comprehensive plan update. The existing retail center at 63rd and Woodward suffers from functional obsolescence. This portion of 63rd Street should be studied as a key focus area during the comprehensive plan update. And last, number seven, explore opportunities to attract sales tax generating uses to the Ellsworth Business Park and Oak Grove Commons. The village and the EDC should further study opportunities to attract businesses that generate sales tax revenue, but are better suited for our business parks. Examples of these types of uses include microbreweries, warehouses with a retail outlet, and point-of-sale businesses. Let me talk about recommended tools for attraction and retention. Village should consider using the following economic development tools strategically in situations where sales tax revenue can be significantly increased. Tax increment financing, TIF districts. A TIF is an economic development tool that uses real estate taxes generated from properties within the district to invest in new development. TIF districts can be effectively used when land may have to be acquired and when the taxable value of the property is expected to increase significantly due to the new investment and development. Redevelopment should take place immediately upon the creation of the district so that revenue is generated each year of the district's existence. Business improvement districts, or BIDs. A business improvement district is a defined area within which sales are subject to an additional tax added to the base tax rate. Revenues from the higher sales tax rate are used to pay for redevelopment and improvements within the district. Bids can be effectively used when land may have to be acquired and when the sales tax revenue is expected to increase significantly due to new investment and development. And just like in the case of a TIF, redevelopment should take place immediately upon the creation of the district so that revenue is generated in each year of the district's existence. And finally, sales tax rebate agreements. Sales tax rebate agreement returns a portion of the sales tax generated to the retailer or the developer. The revenue from the rebated sales taxes are often used to offset the cost of acquiring or making improvements to sites. Sales tax rebates are best used for projects with a high sales tax producing tenant. The village should continue to consider these agreements on a case-by-case basis. Locations for retail development. As stated in the AECOM report, each commercial corridor has a unique identity, offering different development opportunities. Efforts to attract retailers should be focused on the following catalyst sites as identified in the comprehensive plan. And you will notice in the current comprehensive plan, there are several catalyst sites that have now gone through redevelopment, the best example being the former Luxury Motors site on Ogden. So the following sites are from the comprehensive plan. The southeast corner of Finley and Butterfield Roads. The north side of Butterfield Road. University Plaza. The frontage property at Walnut and Ogden. The intersection of Belmont and Ogden. The north side of Stonewall and Ogden Avenue. And the south side of Stonewall and Ogden Avenue. The south side of Ogden between Middaugh and Saratoga. The northwest corner of Ogden and Main Street. And the southeast corner of Ogden and Main Street. And the north side of Ogden between Fairview and Florence. In addition, the Grove Shopping Center at the northwest corner of 75th and Lamont presents an important redevelopment opportunity. And finally, the 63rd Street corridor between Woodward and Belmont. I look forward to working with the Village Council and the staff to achieve the goals of redeveloping retail centers in Downers Grove and attracting high sales tax generating businesses to our community. Thank you very much. And now Dave Fieldman, Chris Brewer, and I would be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Casa. Thank you, Mr. Brewer. Appreciate the very detailed presentation, which is even more detailed in the written materials that we have, which are on the website for those that are interested in following along at home. I will, this is a workshop session, so I will open it up for questions and comments from my colleagues at this point in time. Are there questions or comments with respect to anything that's been presented? Commissioner Waldeck?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all for your report and hard work. It's nice to know that, you need to know where you are in order to determine where you want to go and how you're going to get there. So I think this is a good start. But I do agree that we need to get on the ball here, because ever since I got on council years ago, we've had the 63rd and Woodward, and we've had the same problems. So I think we need to get a little more aggressive in our actions. I was wondering, at 17% at $7.2 billion, I wonder if we are getting our appropriate amount from our sales tax based on that percentage. How did we compare? Are we getting 17% of the sales tax that's out there? Are we using it? Are we appropriately getting that? Also, I noticed that we're a bit low on the low end of the sales tax spectrum, looking at the various municipalities that are out there in the townships. We're not at a real high sales tax, but heaven forbid, if we would suggest that we increase sales taxes, I think the backlash, especially from business, would be tremendous. So that's a challenge in and of itself, I think, as I read this. And the one question I have, and Michael, I mentioned this before, under the SWOT analysis for 63rd Street, for the 63rd and Woodward, there was a comment in there, and I don't know if it was a mistake or if somebody can explain to me. It's very, it's rather trivial, but it just kind of stuck with me. I don't understand it. The comment that you can see Westmont from 355.
Yeah, I think that was a typo. It should have said Woodridge. And
Woodridge.
we've corrected that.
Woodridge I'll take,
Yeah.
not Westmont, okay.
You'd have to squint to see Westmont from there, but I think it's supposed to be Woodridge.
Need binoculars, okay. And that's all I had. I look forward to working with everybody to try and get things going.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Commissioner White.
Well, let me start by saying I'm both pleased and enthused by both reports, by both the analysis of current conditions and the direction that the plan seems to be going. As I went through the AECOM report several times, for the most part, it really kind of fits my own intuitive sense of where our problems were. One little comment I want to make right now, the fact that Downers Grove has much higher absorption of retail, in other words, fewer vacancies, we've done a good job of filling up space, and yet the dollar value of the sales that correspond with that seem to lag. Places like Oak Brook and Southern News on Oak Brook, I think that reinforces the conclusion found in this report that our built-out retail facilities really are obsolete, that we may have hit the sweet spot about 10 years ago. If we go back 10 or 15 years, 10, 12 years ago was like a golden age of Downers Grove sales tax. There was just, it was a huge portion of our budget, and we've slipped since then. I see it as a huge challenge when you have space that's occupied and being used, but at less than optimal rates based on our current market. And I don't have a magic bullet for that, but I think this report does recognize that that's a significant challenge. A piece of data that there are actually two pieces of data I would like, not this evening, not anytime soon, but as part of future progress on this, is I'd like the pull factor charts aggregated, both aggregated and broke out, because I'm not sure I can tell from that chart the relative weight of each, because we may have a very high pull factor in a sales sector that's only 2% of the total amount. And I think, based on the architectural principle of form follows function, getting people outside of Downers Grove to shop within our boundaries and get people within Downers Grove not to leave are the two. That's really the whole ballgame. That's really the whole ballgame right there.
Mr. White, you wanted the pull factors aggregated and
Broken out.
Yeah, they already are broken out, but I'd like to be able to know how much each sector has, the chart showing, sort of an aggregate pull factor, to look at the big picture. The other piece of data that I'd like going forward, and I know there's some legal issues to be kind of tricky, if we can figure out an alternate way to suss out or ferret out the retail sales from the various areas, sub-areas within the village. I know the data is available, but the state doesn't allow us to use it for that purpose, so we have to find a different way to get there. And if it's possible to do that, I think that would be very helpful in our planning. I believe for the long-term benefit of the village, we got to continue down this road. When you look at it, from my point of view, when you look at the value proposition of a government supporting economic development, it's really the sales tax and hotel taxes that return value to the community investment. School districts have a property tax levy freeze, increase the assessed valuation, doesn't increase their ability to levy unless it's new construction. There's some wrinkles on that. This village council has a history of trying not to increase its real estate tax levy. So growing assessed valuation does not immediately return value to our balance sheet. Every dollar of new sales tax is a dollar less we need to impose with a stormwater utility, a dollar less we need to impose on property taxes, and it's money that's going to be spent any which way. That if we capture a larger share of the sales tax market, we can lower other costs and expenses, and no one really loses, well, except the other towns. But those are sort of general philosophical observations. I'm very pleased with the ACOM report. I find it very persuasive. Well, it confirms certain intuitions that I've had for years. And I think the strategic plan is on the right path, definitely in the right direction. And please know, I fully understand the obstacles to solving this are large, that we just can't snap our fingers and fix this. But given the fact that our sales tax infrastructure it was optimal for 10, 15 years ago and not optimal now, it's not something that we can ignore. So good luck. Thank you. Keep going the direction you're going.
Of course, thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner White. Two comments. First of all, you're right that in some cases, large vacant spaces that were replaced with a new tenant are not generating the sales tax that the previous tenant was generating. The best example is the Luxury Motors site, which is now a Fresh Time. And we love Fresh Time, but that was the village's top sales tax generator previously on that property. There are other examples, PGA Tour Superstore, Art Van, even Shop and Save, which are doing better than the predecessor. It was just the Luxury Motors site was such a huge sales tax generator that the replacement tenant, if you will, isn't
Absolutely.
close.
Oh, absolutely.
Isn't close.
You have to take what you can get, absolutely.
The other thing is, you're right, this is going to be a difficult process. It won't happen overnight. But I will tell you, the past week, starting with the meetings I had at the International Council of Shopping Center show last Wednesday, going through tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., 3 major national developers are now very interested in doing redevelopment in Downers Grove. I think, and in fact, one of them has asked for a copy of the AECOM study. That study will not only help us drive our strategy, it'll help developers better understand the market that we're in. So I think it's going to have a value long-term for us.
Commissioner Olson.
Thank you, Mayor. To add to the discussion that was just had, there's items like Mr. Cassis said, the Fresh Time, which is a great victory for us. There's other sites, I think, where we can think of existing sites that things have gone out of, and now there's something in there that is producing little to no sales tax, and there's no other community value either. So I think there's some challenges there. From my perspective, when I look at this report, these strategies for attraction and retention, one of the items that stood out to me was this, the 5th point here was prioritization of the efforts. And obviously, we, as the EDC, only have a limited amount of staff, and the village only has a limited amount of staff resources. But that's an important piece to me, is this focusing on large-scale, high-return projects. And it's one of the reasons that I'm pleased that we're going to add a sub-area in the comprehensive plan on 75th Street, 75th and Lamont Road. I mean, that to me strikes me as the largest area, and then some of the centers on Butterfield Road as well. But there lie the largest pieces. Sites on Ogden Avenue, I think, very crucial as well. Some of those sites, because of the challenges of Ogden Avenue and the existing residential development that comes really close into the commercial corridor, those sites, there's not quite as much space there, and perhaps not as much potential, barring some large incursion into neighborhoods and this and that, which becomes very difficult. So the prioritization of effort into those areas where it really can make a difference. The other piece to me that's important on that is the 75th Street corridor, to Commissioner White's discussion of the pull factors. The 75th Street corridor and the Butterfield Road corridor, and especially the Butterfield Road corridor, are really great opportunities for that pulling in with all the offices in the Butterfield Road corridor. You mentioned, Mr. Cassidy, high-end restaurants. I mean, that's one opportunity, but also shopping opportunities. So I really see this. Obviously, this whole thing is a first step, and I think it will help guide us and direct us as both a council, the village staff, but also the EDC as well. And I really look at this as a major strategy that we're going to have to see through over multiple councils, multiple iterations of the EDC board, multiple iterations of, perhaps many of us will no longer be involved, but this is still going to be an important issue and they'll be building upon this, what we're thinking about here. Final couple of comments. Business improvement districts. Do we currently have any of those in Downers Grove?
We do not.
And we have not previously used that?
We have not.
Okay, so that's something that's new. Am I correct that Westmont used one at 63rd and Cass?
I'm not sure, we'll check into that. I don't know off the top of my head.
Doesn't Art Van have a additional tax?
So Art Van in the agreement set out that if requested by Art Van, we would do the business improvement district, and it turns out they did not request that tool.
They didn't need it.
So we're not levying it. Okay, well, that's good.
We do know that the Village of Lombard has used bids as part of the redevelopment of,
I think the Montgomery Ward redevelopment was a prime
Correct.
example of that.
Yes.
but we'll check on the Westmont.
Yeah, I mean, it's not specific, but to me, this is one of the areas where, I mean, TIF districts, I think we understand TIF districts, we understand what they're, you know, we understand them, we've used them in Downers Grove in the past. Business improvement districts obviously are new, new to, if we did one, it would be new to Downers Grove. They're not per se new to the region. Is this a business improvement district, for my information, is that something that's relatively new in the legal space or in the ability to use that as a tool?
I remember it coming on in the late 1990s, early 2000s.
Okay. So, you know, to me, what I like about that is, you know, that's a tool. We've obviously used sales tax rebate agreements in a number of cases, and that's outlined in the report. But I like the idea of, here's another tool that we haven't previously used that perhaps we're going to add to the mix, especially with regard to these larger development projects. Obviously, a single small site on Ogden Avenue isn't going to be the area where you're likely going to use that, but some of the larger redevelopments are banned, et cetera. So I appreciate that discussion of those districts, and look forward to continuing work on the implementation.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Jose?
Thank you, Mayor. I also want to thank all of you for your work on this report. I think it's very well done and well received. Just a comment and a question. Commissioner Olson spoke to this a moment ago, but with regard to the first strategy, facilitating the aggregation of land to create sites that meet retailer needs, that to me screamed Ogden Avenue. Obviously, it's applicable in other places as well, but I don't think you were exaggerating at all and using the word incursion into neighborhoods. I think we have to be very careful with that, and I'm always a little skeptical of the village buying property, but especially when you're talking about increasing lot depth on Ogden, which obviously has been a challenge really in perpetuity. I think we have to be very careful in using that particular tool. And I think everyone up here has a very good appreciation for the character of our neighborhoods, and will be appropriately careful with that. A question, with regard to the second strategy, zoning entitlement process, making it easy and predictable. I'm wondering if you have any particular suggestions that you've been hearing in the business community. Are there places where we can improve? And if so, can we get that feedback sooner rather than later?
Yeah, one of the areas is where we have mismatches between what our comprehensive plan shows for redevelopment and the underlying zoning. It's what Mr. Casa mentioned in his report. The development community would like us to go ahead and rezone those properties to a business district so that their entitlements are easier to obtain and might be by right developments. That's the number one thing we've heard. We've also heard some positive feedback on our 2014 revised zoning ordinance that offers some improvements in speed and predictability. So I think it's a message of the rezoning aspects, especially as we come out of an update to our comprehensive plan later this year, and to continue doing what we have been doing, which is to make it predictable, easy, and quick.
So outside of those rezonings, it's largely making people aware of the fact that, for lack of a better phrase, we're open for business.
Correct.
Great.
Just, I guess, one comment on that. You know, no matter what the ordinances are, the regulations are, they're different from town to town. It's just the customer service part that's so important. And I'm fortunate, I'm blessed that The staff at Village Hall is so responsive when I call. I mean, nobody returns phone calls faster to me than Stan Popovich. It's amazing. And I need that because I don't want clients calling to complain something's taking too long. So it's an enormous help to me.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Barnett?
Thanks, Mayor. I will join my colleagues in thanking you guys for your work. I took from this a really positive note in that the work, frankly, that's been done since, I don't know, a long time, dating back to Greg, has been largely really well done. I mean, what I got from this was that it confirms what we thought we knew, and what we were wanting to do about it. And if we do some sort of a, action, so to speak, of adoption, if you will, it confirms, too, that the use of all these tools is fair game, if you will. As Greg said, that we're open for business. In my time up here, I think almost all of these have been certainly contemplated, and many of them implemented when opportunities arose, and I think that's awesome. When I hear you say that Stan calls you back immediately, that's fantastic. The zoning issue is one that we've heard about now for a couple of years as it relates to a lot of things. It's not just this, it's residential as well, it's downtown definitions. So that's something we've got to get on. But largely, what this thing says is that we've identified things properly and are working and have put the proper tools on the table to be used to address things, and I think that's awesome. What I'm wondering is as we go forward, and this isn't so much for Michael, for your team, but for my colleagues, as we go forward, I think it's important that we each try and process this a little bit in terms of actions, because we can plan, and we can continue to plan, and we've got comp plan work ahead of us to do some revisions, but the comp plan we've got is awfully good as well. And it leaves very little, very few stones unturned. The 63rd and Woodward, for instance, is simply an addition. It was not an unknown or suddenly realized since the last comp plan was adopted. So the question is, what are we going to do? Commissioner Waldeck made the comment he'd like to be more aggressive at 63rd and Woodward. I'd love to know what aggressive means. When we talk about these things in sort of real theoretical words, I don't know that it makes a lot of progress. I think that we, as a community, have done good work. Our EDC in particular, along with our community development people, have done good work. And our councils have been supportive of those opportunities that have been brought forward. There's a lot of good there. I'd just be curious where my colleagues want to move in the future. Identifying 63rd and Woodward is, I don't know that anybody didn't know that going into a year ago, or for that matter, 8 years ago. Identifying that we've got some challenges with the age and sort of current condition of some of our major shopping centers, again, that's been known for some time. What might we do about it is the million-dollar question. And whether they're bids, as David was talking about, or they're sales tax rebate plans, or they're new TIF districts, we'll have to sort those out. But that's where we can say something to our residents about what we're doing different, if anything. It's obvious to everyone that a sales tax dollar is a lot better than a property tax dollar. And so when we had our conversations a couple weeks ago about phase-outs and hopeful growth in sales tax to cover ourselves on things, there's nobody in the community that's going to argue against a sales tax dollar growth being a great thing. What are we going to do about it is the question. And I'd be just curious and encourage my colleagues to think on that and reflect on it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Probably a good segue to my comments. First of all, I think that the AECOM report is excellent and is very valuable and useful, because in order to measure performance, you have to have some benchmarks. Otherwise, how do you know how you're performing? And the old rule is anything that can be measured can be improved. So having some benchmarks and measuring our performance against those benchmarks gives us a baseline from which we can improve in the areas where we want to. And I think it's very important to have that, both for the EDC's efforts, for our own staff efforts, for this council and future council's efforts, and quite frankly for the community's benefit, which is going to be a big theme in some of my comments. Because I probably have said it a million times, both as a trustee and then as mayor, that maintaining our economic vitality in this community does not happen by accident. It doesn't happen through inertia. It takes effort, a fair amount of effort. Simply putting the open sign on the door does not bring customers inside to shop. You have to actually work at it, and you have to work creatively and aggressively. I'm glad to hear those words. I'm not hearing a lot of good, positive, proactive comments from my colleagues because that's what it takes. Understanding that in just about every other community within 50 square miles, they're all sitting around in a room just like this, maybe on a different night, talking about how they can pull businesses away from Downers Grove. The environment is more competitive today than it ever has been before. So let's not kid ourselves if we think we're just some island that people are going to gravitate to. Everyone around us is competing with us. I've even heard accusations that, oh, I don't know, there's a large city to our east that is working very actively to try to attract businesses down there. If you talk to the mayor of Oak Brook, he'll say it a little bit more violently than that. The mayor of Chicago might disagree with it, but let's not kid ourselves. There's a great deal of competition in this space, and we need to work very hard at this. So I'm glad to hear these proactive, aggressive statements because that's what it takes. But here's the rub. This community, when I say the community, I mean people in the community, I mean people in the council, I mean people on staff. They've always been a little schizophrenic when it comes to economic development. On the one hand, there's a sense of you gotta do something. Why don't we do something about 63rd and Woodward? Why don't we do something about Ogden Avenue? But a failure to understand what it takes to do something. And I agree, you have to do things that may ruffle some feathers. Otherwise, you're never going to achieve any change. The key takeaway from the AECOM report is that retailers want to locate in Downers Grove. Great. We've created an environment that attracts people to our community. But appropriate, easy-to-develop sites are not available. So it's not that we haven't made an attractive community. It's not that we haven't made an attractive business environment. We don't have the sites to put the attractive retailers in. So how do we do something about that? Well, we have to use tools. And I'm going to go way back now to Commissioner Mark Zabadol, who was famous for saying when he sat up here that it's very important to have an economic development toolbox. And you want to have as many tools in that toolbox as possible because when you encounter a situation, you have to be able to use the right tools to get the job done. You don't want to try to take a screw out with a hammer. That's not very good. And you also don't want to, there's other things that require a little bit more muscle in order to get them done. And there may be some concepts that from time to time, and this is very cyclic, come and go in this community. Acquire property, don't acquire property. Government shouldn't be in the real estate business. Why don't you do something about 63rd? Well, those concepts are not necessarily consistent. They're incongruous. In order for us to get some of these things done, we're going to have to use tools. We have to use the right tools for the right job in the most responsible and effective manner possible. And I think the community and this council needs to understand that. If we really want to do something, we need to do something with the right tools. That doesn't mean, again, that you take out a screw with a sledgehammer. You want to use the right tool for the right situation. It has to be appropriate and measured, but that goes without saying. But when you have the occupancy that we have, it's not that we don't have businesses in the spaces. We don't have the business in the spaces, in the right spaces, and it's not the right businesses selling the right types of things to generate the right types of sales tax. So in order to try to steer that, you have to be a little bit more proactive because simply putting up a sign and saying, please come to our community is not going to achieve that result. Certainly not in the time frame that we have in mind here. So I echo and will elevate, actually, the challenge to my colleagues and even more so the community folks, that if you really want something to be done about these areas that perhaps haven't performed as well as they should in our community, we need to all support doing something using the right tools. And that may mean facilitating parcel acquisition. That may mean changing some zoning. That may mean making some changes in the makeup of what our community has traditionally looked like in certain areas. Otherwise, it's going to stay the same because the reality is a lot of these parcels are in private hands. We can't do something without using some of these tools in a responsible manner. And I want to underscore responsible manner because we always want to work with the private sector as much as possible to achieve, first and foremost, private sector solutions that we can facilitate rather than ease along, shall we say. But you got to nudge sometimes if you really want something done. And I think our challenges are very clear. I think our tools are very clear. I think we need to continue to be creative and tactful in how we apply these tools in order to get something done. No question about it, this is a long-term play. This isn't going to happen tomorrow. Even if something were done tomorrow, we wouldn't see the benefits of it for some years to come. And that's why it's more important than ever before to start doing something sooner, because the longer you wait, not only do you lose those opportunities to those competing communities, but you're not going to see the return on these investments for many years to come. So the longer you wait, the longer you twiddle your thumbs. I'm not suggesting anyone's doing that. The longer you're going to see any return on those investments. So I'm very encouraged by sort of what's being suggested here, because I think it's what needs to be done, but we all have to have the stomach to do it. Last, really want to thank the Economic Development Corporation for putting together this study, for commissioning it, for their leadership and their contributions to the very valuable partnership that we have with the village and with the community. I think it's been a wonderfully successful experiment. It's way beyond an experimental stage right now, to have the Economic Development Corporation that we do have, and want to thank Michael for your leadership, and Mr. Brewer for an outstanding study. So this is a workshop, so we're having a conversation here, so I'm going to let people still ask any other questions they want, but I want to pause and ask if any members of the audience have any questions or comments on what's been presented thus far. Clearly, we're not voting on anything tonight, but if anyone has questions or comments, we'd welcome you coming down and sharing them with us. Everyone is just overwhelmed with information.
Their eyes are glazed over.
And on that, well, that was by design. Going back to earlier comments. Any final comments or questions? There's an old story that when you're ahead, don't say anything, sit down.
I just want to say thank you for the tremendous support, the council and the staff, and look forward to implementing the plan.
Terrific, thank you. And obviously, this will be an ongoing process. This is the long haul play, and there'll be many more conversations. But we should be very mindful of it as opportunities arise in the future of the things that we learned here today. Thank you, and thank you for coming out and presenting to us, Mr. Brewer.
As a purely procedural question, is there a pending action item coming up in the future, or is this just a discussion?
I don't think there'll need to be
I
an
don't
action
think
item.
we
I
need
think we got great direction, and we'll just get to work on it.
Good, perfect. I just was curious about that.
The action item is very clear. It's 2 words: do something.
Anything. Start something. Okay, thank you. I'm good.
That was the direction.
Thank you.
All right, very good. That brings us to item 10B.
Which is a consideration of an ordinance authorizing a special use at 4617 Roslyn. Here to present this item is the gentleman with the best phone etiquette in the village, our Community Development Director, Stan Popovich.
You realize people are going to be calling you now and timing your response.
I know.
Under 4 minutes.
There's a lot of pressure now.
Good evening, Mr. Popovich.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you. The first item, if I figure out which way we're going here. There we go. Is a special use for 4617 Roslyn Road, which is, I'm still having trouble with the mouse. There we go. It's on the east side of town, just north of Chicago Avenue. Here shown in green, it's a single-family parcel that is a larger parcel on Roslyn Road. The proposal is to build a single-family home. Shown here in gray, there's an existing older home a little bit behind the gray box here. And then construct an extended family accessory housing unit here in this location on the house. The floor plan here shows where the new extended family accessory housing unit will be. This is first floor. First floor will include a 1-car garage, a kitchen, a dining room, a living room, and a den. And then the second floor will include a master bedroom and a bathroom and a closet as well upstairs. That is separated from the house. The proposal is to allow a mother-in-law to live in the suite with her family that way. One of the goals of the extended family requirements is that the house remain to appear as a single-family home. It does. The extended family accessory housing unit will be generally located in this area. There is a door, but it does face north, so it's not facing the street. The main door is shown here in the elevation as well. The requirement does include a conversion plan, so this shows the extended family plan here on the left, and then the conversion plan on the right. The biggest changes is taking out the kitchen, the second kitchen, and then taking out a wall in the butler's pantry to create an entry area into the former extended family accessory housing unit there. And then same thing with the second floor. You can see here outlined in red again. There's a closet there at the top of the stairs that would take out the closet and convert that into one big space with a bedroom where the former master bedroom was. The comprehensive plan calls for a variety of housing in the village and allow residents to age in place. We believe that this proposal meets those requirements, as well as meets the standards in 6.010F, which is the extended family accessory housing section of the zoning ordinance, and then special use standards in 12.050.H. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those at this time for you.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the council? Commissioner Barnett?
I just wanted to say that I'm kind of excited this is going on. Like many things, they take a little while to get rolling, and when my colleagues that were up here in the previous council will remember when we went through the last change, this was kind of some specific input that we collectively added and adjusted from draft to final, because I think this is a really important opportunity. This particular application aside, the idea of trying to encourage and help facilitate age-in-place opportunities. We have some demographics that are staring us in the face, demographics and economics. And so I'm kind of proud of the fact that we made those adjustments. I don't know if other communities have similar rules, but I like ours, and I'm glad to see they're in play.
Thank you. Other questions from the council? Any questions from the audience? Questions or comments from the audience? Seeing none, thank you. We'll move on to 10C as in Charlie.
And 10C and 10D will be taken together. They both have to do with the vacation of an alley on Vennard. Stan.
Thank you, Manager Fielman. Good evening again. This petition before us is an alley vacation at 4147 Vennard Road, northwest quadrant of Downers Grove, just a little bit north of Ogden Avenue and immediately south of Dorhofer Park. This is showing a red outline of the alley here. You can see the relatively new paver parking lot that the Park District put in a few years ago. This picture is from 2013, so the house and the structure are no longer on the property. It's a vacant piece of land right now. The proposal is to vacate this alley portion to the Park District, which owns both the property to the north and to the south. This is showing the plat of easement, plat of vacation. We contacted the various utility companies to see if there's any utilities in there. There's a sanitary main in the ground, and then there's some overhead utilities running generally along the north side of this alley there. All the utilities were okay vacating so long as we maintain an easement over the entire property, which we've proposed and which the Park District has agreed to. We believe that this follows the comprehensive plan requirements to work cooperatively with the Park District to ensure an adequate provision of parks and open space. And then with regard to the vacation right-of-way vacation policy, number 2003-58, it meets those requirements. Staff has valued the vacated right-of-way amount as just over $4,900. That takes into account the estimated value of land adjacent to the parcel, and then we take that square foot value, figure out the total amount, and then we devalue it by a third, just based on because of the fact that we're going to encumber it with an easement over the entire thing. And then per the policy, it is at the discretion of the village council whether they require compensation or not, or what type of compensation. So those are the two items before you tonight for the alley vacation. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have on that tonight.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the council on either of these items, 10C or D? Commissioner Barnett?
Thanks, Mayor. Let me start by making real clear I have no problem whatsoever with waiving the fee to the Park District. Are we, in our process, in our policy on determining that value, are we using assessed valuation as opposed to market?
Yes, we use the tax assessor's latest tax records, and then for commercial properties, we'll have the commercial properties perform an appraisal. So we really only do our internal estimate, internal value with residential properties.
Okay.
Just to be clear, it's based on the market value as shown on the tax bill.
Yeah. The few that I've seen strike me as kind of nuts in terms of low. So if we think we want to have a policy that suggests we should be compensated for the vacation, that's a separate question. Assuming we have that policy in place, I'd encourage us to just run a few thought processes on some of the 2 or 3 that we've done of late, including this one, and see if we really think we're reflecting the market valuation of that property. I'm pretty skeptical on it. But I'm fine with this in terms of the Park District and the relationship there and their use. That's all great.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner White?
On that particular point, perhaps you can answer, we might be able to shed some light on that process. If you go back to the aerial photograph, you say that the house to the south has now been demolished.
That's correct.
How did the Park District acquire the house?
I believe they just purchased the home.
Okay, well, then we have the most recent fair market value. So as an internal check, find out what the Park District paid for the house and see how that conforms with what the assessor said, and we'll know how close we are. And it doesn't affect this particular case, in my opinion, but we're looking for a way to figure out, is the assessor's value reasonably accurate? If there was a recent purchase between a willing buyer and a willing seller at arm's length, that's the definition of fair market value. Okay, that's all.
Commissioner, thank you. Commissioner Olson?
What's the, I mean, I see the lot size, and I'm sure in the later attachments it gets into the exact, what's the width of this lot, this alley?
I just have to look at the numbers here. It's 6,000 square feet, and it's 300, approximately
20 by 300.
20
feet deep, so it's 20 by 300.
Okay. So it's 20 foot wide. So that's, so that's why the assessed value, and does, forgive my ignorance on this topic, does the assessed value, so this is an assessed value of this specific parcel?
No, sir.
No.
It is the value of this property for purposes of staff analysis. First of all, it's not taxed because it's a public right-of-way. So what we
Right.
do is we take the property immediately adjacent to it, usually the one that's seeking the vacation, and we look at their tax bill, and it breaks out value, land value and improvement value.
Improvement, yes.
We use the land value market rate as the basis for the calculation. In instances where the vacated right-of-way would be encumbered with an easement such that you cannot build on it or make any improvements to it, as is the case in this one, that land value is decreased by a factor of 1/3 to compensate for the fact that you can't actually build anything on it. That's the methodology.
Okay, so the land value of 4205 Fenard Road is in this green sheet. Land, the property address, that's 4205 Fenard Road is the property immediately to the south?
Right.
Yes.
Okay. And the land value, that's the market value, that's the assessed value times 3.
Taking out the building.
Well,
I don't know.
Just the land component.
Just the
it's the
land.
land.
I'll show you tax bill sometime and figure it out.
Well, I mean, I know, I've looked at my own tax bill, like, I know there's the land and the improvements. I mean, it does,
Suggests the lot's worth $54,000.
Yeah.
Is what it suggests, and that's where I'm struggling.
I agree. I mean, that's, so I agree with that. I mean, the idea of, what is our policy with regard to, if, for example, if a private person were to want to purchase this alley or want to acquire this alley encumbered with the easement, would they be required to pay this $4,000 or would we waive that?
Generally speaking, yes.
Yes.
The specific language is the amount and type of compensation, if any, to be required as a condition of the effectiveness of the vacation of the parcel. So the council gets to decide what the compensation is, if any.
Yeah,
Our practice has been to, yes, charge based on the methodology.
Recent history has been pretty consistently in a private situation, yes, to charge. Because it's basically a public asset that is being given to someone, so the philosophy has been there should be compensation paid to the public for the use of that property. This, of course, is unique because you're dealing with another public entity.
Right, but we're giving up the property.
Right, but we could charge another public entity, we're basically charging the taxpayers because we're basically coterminous with the Downers Grove Park District, so it's a little bit different than a private It's a public benefit to a public benefit. So we have the discretion not to charge, that's thus the option to fee waive. In a private setting, I can't think of a situation where that fee was waived.
Okay.
Does that help? I was actually going to suggest that maybe the policy should be trotted out again, because this comes up every now and then. I know it's attached here, we haven't, but maybe we ought to look at the policy again, because this is something that has evolved over time. We used to not charge anything. These used to just get vacated as a public asset or given away. Personally, I thought that was a bad idea, and over time, we have developed a policy that tries to value these parcels. It's not easy because of the inherent nature of a lot of these, but certainly how we value them for purposes of exercise is open for conversation. If we don't think we're recapturing enough, then by all means, let's look at it. Now, I'm a strong proponent of recapturing some value to the public for the giving up of a public asset. And I'll get to it in a minute in my comments, but here's a little different because we're talking about the Park District.
I agree with you. I'm in favor of recapturing the value. And this is land that the village and the village taxpayers own.
Right.
And so, and we want
Right.
to capture the
But
value.
it's the same taxpayers that we're charging, and I query whether, but it's our option.
Okay.
Commissioner Jose.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of quick questions. We have one of them already answered, but wondering if the village had any plans for this particular right-of-way. I mean, it's 20 by 300 in the middle of, between the park and the... Right. I'm kind of getting to the value of it.
We have no particular plans other than to accommodate the utilities that are there and would remain under an easement.
And I don't dispute that this is a public asset, of course, but I'd be curious, and I don't expect you to have it now, but I'd be curious to know the history of how we got it. Did the village pay something for it? Are we charged?
It looks to me like it was intended as a continuation perhaps of the street to the, what is that, to the west?
To the west, correct.
And so it was just platted as a street someday, and it just never was developed that way.
That's correct, and it's important to understand that rights-of-way are granted, not deeded, so they're given to the public body, not purchased by the public body.
Right.
So it's a requirement of the subdivision ordinance, basically.
That's what I'm driving at. We got it for nothing.
Okay, Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you, Mayor. Going back in history, I do remember a sale of $1, going back a ways.
I don't think I like that.
Well, on the theory that we should recover something for anything that we sell, public property. I do support the vacation of the property, the Park District, but I don't think I will be supporting the waiving of the fee. And there are generally two arguments that I've heard over the years for waiving fees for other taxing bodies. The first is the erroneous assumption that because we're both taxing bodies, both public, we will equally affect the same residents, so in this same manner. This isn't true, and it's bad logic. The property belongs to the people of the village of Downers Grove, and in the last several years, we've had developed policies regarding the vacation of properties that are owned by the people of Downers Grove, and while the constituencies of the village and the Park District are quite similar, they are different. We are also separate taxing bodies, separate revenue streams, and responsibility for expenses. Under that logic, it makes no sense, no difference than we would support our current policies, and we need to charge them. I think both entities need to be separately responsible for their expenses. The second argument I often hear often pulls out the words cooperation and collaboration out of a hat, and I do support cooperation and collaboration, but it's becoming a very trite expression. It sounds good, but it only works when both parties truly believe in cooperation and collaboration. For example, I was the one that brought up the public questions about the village expenses regarding the work done at McCullum Park, Barth Pond, and Washington Park, especially the Washington Park. When we were going through that, it seemed almost weekly when we would come in and we would hear, oh, the Park District wants something else. Oh, they want to improve the equipment, they want to improve the sand, they want to get this, they want to get that. And they kept making change orders to increase. We were paying for it. And, you know, they weren't looking out so much for our budget, but as to what they can do. And I think it was not a, wasn't treated as an equal collaborative effort in that sense. Yes, you know, we got something, we got an asset, that, property that we needed to do some work, and they were happy to cooperate with us. But when you get into the details, it costs us a lot of money, and it's done that way for these projects and probably others. So asking them to shell out a whopping, you know, over $4,000 for a piece of property, I think is appropriate. We have a policy, we should enforce it. It does not present an undue burden on the Park District, and so therefore I won't be supporting the waiver of the fee, but I will be supporting the vacation. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions, council? Well, I'm apologize up front because I'm going to be both trite and illogical, but I'm not going to be vindictive. I think things that have happened with past Park District administrations and past people who aren't even around anymore, I think that really has little to no bearing upon this other than try to get a pound of flesh from something that happened a long time ago. So call me trite, call me illogical, but number one, this is public. Right now, this is a public asset that's being used publicly in a public environment by the public right now, and more or less, for all intents and purposes. And we're going to give it to another public body for the same public person, for the same public benefit, and for more, in this situation, the constituency is almost identical. Yes, the organizations are different, but it's almost charging Peter to pay Paul. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but that's my view on this. We also waive fees for not-for-profits all the time for things that we normally charge, and this council has no problem with it whatsoever. When St. Mary's has an event and there's normally a raffle fee or something like that, no one's ever had a problem with that. This is very similar to it. We can go back to a policy of charging everybody for everything all the time. If we want to consider that, we certainly can. And as I suggested, if we want to bring this policy up for discussion again, because it's been a while, we can look at both how we calculate the value of the parcels. We can also look at whether there is no discretion to waive the fee, in which case we'll just charge everybody all the time. And that way our partners would have their expectations better managed. We should also look then about what we do in terms of waiving fees for not-for-profits. There's clearly been a trend in this council and prior councils to increase the amount of waivers of fees for not-for-profits and other governmental entities. So this would be a little inconsistent with that. But in this particular case, first and foremost, I have no problem at all with the vacation request, because this is the classic situation where we have absolutely no use for this. All the criteria are met, and the vacation makes perfect sense to me. And in terms of the compensation, I am a strong advocate in the private setting of when a public asset is put into private hands, that there should be compensation for that, because the people are giving something else, giving something up for private use. And so the public ought to be compensated for that, and we have a way of calculating that. It's not a perfect measurement. In fact, measuring these things is notoriously difficult given the nature and the encumbrances. That doesn't mean we can't improve it. And if we want to have a conversation about coming up with a different metric, fine. My only concern, and it's not a concern, is that the policy be clear so that when people request vacations, they have a reasonable anticipation of what the cost will be. But whether it's $5,000 or it's $50,000, we can come up with whatever measure we want that makes sense. But let's make it very clear to manage expectations. But notwithstanding that very strong advocacy for compensation, I truly see this as going from one public hand to another public hand, and in the interest of intergovernmental cooperation and trying to foster better relationships going forward, or maybe asking the Park District to partner with us on other projects down the road, that we not be trite and illogical. Questions or comments from the audience?
Mayor?
Oh, yes, of course. Commissioner
We're going
Barnett.
to continue. Sorry.
Sorry,
Did Gordon,
I see you.
did Gordon want to? I don't want to jump in front of Gordon. I just was going to, my memory is fading in my advanced years. District 99 Prince Street, didn't we kind of prorate that based on constituency mapping, if you will? for lack of a better term?
Based on their taxable EAV, how much of that district's taxable EAV was in the village of Downers Grove versus outside? And so when we vacated Prince Street near the North High campus, we charged them half of the recommended amount.
Which was an attempt to kind of recognize what I think Bill was getting at. The Park District's overlay is so similar to ours, I think it start to be really splitting hairs. But I think there's some merit to considering that, at least when those boundaries are not so. Thank you, vocabulary breakdown at 9 o'clock. We have I guess the only thing I'd suggest, though, is that when we talk about things correctly, our policy has in it stated the opportunity for council to waive.
Yes.
And so it's not that there's a policy not being enforced. There's a potential waiver being considered, but the policy itself provides for that. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner. Dr. Goodman, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, and staff. I'm Gordon Goodman. I live at 5834 Midaw, and I have 3 points in connection with this request that I'd like to make. The first is related more generally to the vacation of public rights-of-way by the village. For a long time, I've felt that particularly the unconstructed roadways that have been dedicated to the village are very important public properties and can be used to extend the non-vehicle transportation network of the village. I'm very pleased with what's gone on over on the unconstructed portion of Jefferson in the southwest portion of the village, where it's been used for the regional bikeway. I think there are similar examples up near the Grant and Lee Park and other places in the village. So in general, I oppose the vacation of the village's property, particularly the unconstructed roadways. The alleyways are in general much more difficult to use for these alternative transportation purposes because they run so very close to existing buildings and property that is fully occupied by private individuals. In this case, the alleyway is surrounded by Park District property, and by the vacation would be actually useful to the Park District as a connector for property. So in this particular case, I fully support the vacation by the village. And in connection with that first point, I'd like to say that I support the idea that the village would look again at its vacation policy, particularly in light of the increased emphasis that you've given to alternative means of transportation, such as bikes and pedestrian networks in the village, and look at the existing unconstructed rights-of-way and see if you don't have a much more useful purpose for them in your ownership than maintaining them as green space. So yes, please do look again at your policy and the usefulness of these unconstructed rights-of-way. The second point I wanted to make was that I'm very pleased with the report that is in the council responses. I guess I have to thank Commissioner Waldeck for having asked those questions, because they clearly indicate the level of cooperation and mutual support between the village and the Park District. And the staff has pointed out the economies for Park District property being used for stormwater management purposes to save the community substantial amounts of money. I'm very pleased with the cooperation on Barth Pond to use that as a major water management facility of the village, but also a tremendous amenity for the village through the Park District's management. But the cost of restoring its water management benefits by the village, paying for that dredging is entirely appropriate in my mind and illustrates the level of cooperation that we've had in good times between the village and the Park District. And with the mayor, I'm looking forward to even more such good cooperation as we move forward. The last point I wanted to make was concerning the waiver of the fee in this case. And again, I fully support waiving the fee for this, but I'd like to comment a little bit about the fee and the way it's calculated. I think it's very logical to take the local land value, and it's a little hard to get that local land value for such a 20-foot wide long strip of land. There isn't much of a market for that. So the village has a very ingenious procedure to use the adjacent property values. And I would just like the village to compare that calculation based on the adjacent property values with the value you would get by using the equivalent, the land equivalent value that you recently enacted in December last year as the buyout for building in the village to compensate the Park District and School District. The payments that a developer would make to these entities in lieu of giving land to them is calculated on the basis of a certain value that you revised for the first time in 25 years last December. But I think it's a wise thing to keep looking at that value, and in particular in this comparison, you could figure out what the value based on your compensation formula would be for a piece of property of this size, 20 by, what is it?
300.
800?
300.
300 feet, yes. So compare that with the value that you came up with by comparing it with the local land value, and that just gives you a check on whether you may want to revise that compensation formula more often than every 25 years. And I would predict that you might want to, as the values of property are going up, my wife pointed out something in the paper just today comparing the property values in Downers Grove area with February 2015, and she said something about a 17% increase over the year. But at any rate, it's a dynamic market here, and you should keep track of what you're learning about the land value, and your staff should keep checking to see if the compensation formula is still appropriate. In any way, I do fully support this vacation. I fully support the waiver request from Bill McAdam, and I think it's entirely appropriate in this case because you're helping another entity provide a public service to the same public that you're trying to serve. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from the audience? Good evening, welcome.
Good evening, Paul Feil, Superintendent of Planning with Downers Grove Park District. I just wanted to give just a brief background on these properties that in About 7 years ago, the Park District was able to purchase the property to the north of this alley. It's adjacent to Dorhofer Park. As you can see there, the park is to the north. And at that time, when we purchased the parcel to the north and developed the parking lot you see there, the right-of-way at that time was being used by the property owner to the south for the driveway access to that property. But then about a year ago, we had an opportunity to purchase the parcel to the south at 4205 Bernard Road. And our intent here is really just to connect that new parcel to Dorhofer Park to make it a part of Dorhofer Park. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for being here and putting yourself in the line of fire. Any questions from the council?
No problem.
Not that you're unfamiliar with this room.
Right, exactly. And if I could add, I too have found Stan to be very responsive. And I appreciate that. I greatly appreciate it.
I think his phone might be ringing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Clearly, there's some interest in maybe looking at the policy, but given all the other things that are going on right now, I don't know if that quite is up there at the top of the list, but I'm hearing, I don't think anybody's. Commissioner Waldeck, please.
Well, if you're always considering the waiving of fees for other public properties, why go through a big process of examining the valuations if you're planning on giving it away anyway? So maybe it's something that we could put off and not, put it on the top burner. Thanks.
Good question. It's all part of the mix. Very good. Thank you. That brings us to the end of our first reading.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. That brings us to to item 11, the mayor's report. In addition to the item that's listed here, I have a few of the things I want to touch upon, but let's start with the resolution. By way of background, before I ask the village clerk to read the resolution and then ask for a motion and a second, by way of background, everyone is probably familiar with the fact, we've mentioned it a couple of times here tonight, that the village is in the process of doing its periodic review and update of its comprehensive plan. We are committed to doing that every 5 years. It's time to do that. As part of that process, what I recommended to my colleagues is that we appoint a nimble group, because this is something we are planning on doing every 5 years, not every 45 years. And so we want to do it frequently, but in a more nimble way. So the group consists of representatives from a number of the different boards and commissions within the village, and then some others that probably have arguably the most connection to the comprehensive plan, not to suggest that we're not all connected to the comprehensive plan. So the idea was to have representatives from the Stormwater Floodplain Oversight Commission, the Architectural Design Review Board, the Downtown Management Corporation, the Plan Commission, the Traffic and Parking Commission, the Economic Development Corporation, and the Zoning Board of Appeals. So we have, there are 9 members that are represented. Because there are 2 primary land use boards, there are 2 representatives from each of the Plan Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals. So I don't know if the acronyms will be read as part of the resolution, but I wanted to get that out in advance, that if they are, then we'll know what we're referring to. And then I'll have some more comments after we get a motion and a second. If I could ask the village clerk to please read the resolution creating the ad hoc committee for the comprehensive plan review and update. Ad hoc committee meeting is being put together solely for this purpose, and then it will dissolve after their work is done, and also identifying who the members of that committee will be.
A resolution establishing the Downers Grove Comprehensive Planning Ad Hoc Committee and appointment of members thereto. Whereas the Village Council has determined the need to convene a comprehensive planning ad hoc committee to provide oversight of the 5-year comprehensive plan update and review of the downtown zoning regulations for the Village of Downers Grove. And whereas the Village Council of the Village of Downers Grove has determined that it is in the best interest of the village and its residents to work cooperatively on the 5-year comprehensive plan update and review of the downtown zoning regulations. And whereas the Village Council of the Village of Downers Grove has determined that it is necessary and desirable to establish a comprehensive planning ad hoc committee to provide oversight of the 5-year comprehensive plan update and review of the downtown zoning regulations process as work proceeds. Now therefore be it resolved by the Village Council of the Village of Downers Grove as follows. Section 1, Comprehensive Planning Ad Hoc Committee established. A comprehensive planning ad hoc committee, hereinafter referred to as the committee, is hereby created. The committee shall automatically dissolve December 31, 2016, unless otherwise extended by the village council. B, the committee shall consist of 9 members as follows. 2 members shall be a resident of the village of Downers Grove who serve on the Plan Commission. 2 members shall be a resident of the village of Downers Grove who serve on the Zoning Board of Appeals. 1 member shall be a resident of the village of Downers Grove who serves on the Architectural Design Review Board. 1 member shall be a resident of the village of Downers Grove who serves on the Transportation and Parking Commission. 1 member shall be a resident of the village of Downers Grove who serves on the Stormwater and Floodplain Oversight Committee, 1 member who serves on the Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation, and 1 member who serves on the Downtown Downers Grove Management Corporation. The mayor shall appoint the members of the committee subject to confirmation by the village council. All members shall be appointed for the term of the committee unless otherwise removed. Section 2, conduct of meetings, records. A, the committee may establish rules concerning the procedure, meeting, and operation of the committee, which rules shall be consistent with the codes, ordinances, and resolutions of the village and other applicable laws. B, all meetings of the committee shall be open to the public and conform to the Illinois Open Meetings Act. C, the committee shall keep written records of all its meetings and proceedings. Copies of all minutes shall be forwarded to the village clerk. Section 3, powers and duties. The general purpose and duty of the committee shall be to 1, hold regular meetings to discuss and update the comprehensive plan and discuss and update downtown zoning regulations. 2, recommend to the village council by simple majority the inclusion of the 63rd Street sub-area and 75th Street sub-area into the comprehensive plan. 3, recommend the village council by simple majority a draft 5-year update to the comprehensive plan no later than December 31, 2016. 4, recommend to the village council by simple majority draft amendments to the downtown zoning regulations no later than December 31, 2016. And 5, perform any additional duties and tasks as the village council may from time to time direct. Section 4, appointment. A, Mayor Tully has made the following appointments to the Comprehensive Planning Ad Hoc Committee. Stormwater Floodplain and Oversight Committee, Dave Gorman, Chair. Architectural Design Review Board, Kareen Axe. Economic Development Corporation, John Luca. Downtown Management Corporation, Ed Kalina. Plan Commission, Irene Hoekstrom. Plan Commission, Mark Tolman. Transportation and Parking Committee, Jim Wilkerson. Zoning Board of Appeals, Marge Earl. Zoning Board of Appeals, Diva Machauskas. B, the Village Council of the Village of Downers Grove does hereby confirm the aforementioned appointments. Section 5, general provisions. A, all resolutions or parts of resolutions in conflict with the provisions of this resolution are hereby repealed. B, this resolution shall be in full force and effect from and after its passage and publication.
Mayor Tully, I move to adopt a resolution establishing the Downers Grove Comprehensive Planning Ad Hoc Committee and appointment of members thereto as presented.
I second that motion.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the council? I'll just add, number 1, thank you to our village clerk, April Holden. I believe that may have been the longest resolution you've ever read. So thank you for that. And second of all, I want to thank all the members of the ad hoc committee, the proposed members of the ad hoc committee. These are all people who already serve as volunteers in the community, as you can tell from the various boards and commissions. Some of them are here tonight. And we very much appreciate your extending your service to your community by taking on this additional, very important task as part of the 5-year comprehensive plan review. So we are very grateful in advance for your continued service to our community. Are there any other questions? If not, then I'll ask for a roll call, please.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Bolduc?
Aye.
Commissioner Fatimo? Aye. Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Burnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. That resolution passed unanimously, and everyone is appointed. Congratulations. I believe the first meeting is scheduled for
Tomorrow.
First Wednesday in April.
first Wednesday in April.
April 6th.
April 6th, and there will be more details coming from staff to the newly appointed members of the ad hoc committee with respect to their roles and responsibilities.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And by the way, I've also expressed to each and every one of them that in addition to representing their own views, they should also act as liaisons and voices for their respective boards. So they should make sure they gather the views of the rest of those boards and bring them forward as part of their labors. That ends the, no, I have one more thing on the mayor's report, one more things in the mayor's report. Number 1, you may recall, for those who were paying attention, and I hope everyone was, and there's been some good media attention to it. During the State of the Village address of the annual report, you may recall that I highlighted the importance of maintaining our AAA bond rating because it translates into real dollars for the community. Now I'm pleased to tell you about a very good example of that. If you have been looking at our village website, you may have seen a top story of how the village saved $1 million. I'll say that again, $1 million on bond refinancing with our AAA rating. We have called upon our staff to be very mindful of opportunities to refinance the various bond issuances that we have out. This happened to be a bond issuance of $7.5 million in general obligation bonds that were issued in 2008 for stormwater projects. We were able to take advantage of a refinancing opportunity on that debt issuance, and that refinancing saved us $1 million. So congratulations to staff for that tremendous result. That's fantastic, but it is only made possible by our exceptional bond rating. Having that AAA rating really translates into real dollars. So when you hear us talk about how important that is, there's a classic example of why it is. So I wanted to make sure I reported that out. The other thing that I would be remiss if I didn't report out as part of my report is we've talked a little bit about aging in place, and we have a prime example of aging in place. I would be remiss if I did not wish my colleague, Commissioner Barnett, happy birthday. Tonight is his birthday.
It was so close. It was so close. Thank you, Mayor.
Happy 37th birthday.
Thank you, Mayor. Well done.
And that ends my report. That brings us to item 12, Mayor's Report. Mr. Fieldman.
No report tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 13, Village Attorney's Report. Ms. Petrarca.
Thank you, Mayor. 2 items to present this evening. The first is an ordinance authorizing a special use for 4617 Roslyn Road to permit an extended family accessory housing unit. And the second is an ordinance authorizing the vacation of a public alley adjacent to 4147 Bernard Road. Thank you, Mayor. That is all.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 14, Council Member Reports. This is an opportunity for members of the Village Council to report on things that they serve as liaisons for or other goings-on in the community that would be of interest to those in the room and watching from home. I'll start with Commissioner Jose.
Thank you, Mayor. Don't worry, Bob, it wouldn't have gotten past my report. Touching on that same subject, I hope my colleagues will indulge me for just a moment. In addition to it being Bob's birthday, it's also the second birthday of my daughter, Hannah. And I just wanted to say happy birthday to my daughter. God, I hope she's sleeping now. She
made it through my report. That'd be a report.
There you go. She was in quite a hurry to make sure she was born on Commissioner Barnett's birthday. I hadn't planned on speaking more than a second, but Mike is currently rushing to grab a photo. And so I'm trying to filibuster, a la the mayor's usual filibustering when he needs a moment or two. And that was her about 2 years ago. You have the second photo, and there she is outside of Leicester School. Happy birthday, honey. Thanks, Mayor.
Very nice. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Waldeck.
Happy birthday to all. And otherwise, I have no report.
Thank you. Commissioner Fatimo.
No report. My daughter's birthday is tomorrow, though.
Photos. We need photos. Thank you. Commissioner Olson.
No report.
Commissioner White.
No report.
We'll save the birthday boy for last. Commissioner Barnett.
Just thank you to my colleagues for the nice wishes, and happy birthday to Hannah.
Thank you. A couple things to wrap up with. Number one, Downers Grove, we all know we're the home of champions. And I just want to let everyone know about the latest championship team in Downers Grove. You all, of course, know about the DuPage Stars Hockey Club. The DuPage Stars Hockey Club is a combined high school team that encompasses the school districts of Downers Grove North, Downers Grove South, Hinsdale South, and Lisle High Schools. The team was formed about 3 years ago and currently competes in the Illinois High School Hockey League Hayes Division. Well, the excitement, you could just feel it in the air because this season was tremendously successful. The club had a league record of 19-5 was their record. Coach Chaz Davis was named Coach of the Year, and 5 players were named League All-Stars, including Josh Smith, a senior at Downers Grove North, Jack McGann, a senior at Downers Grove South, Patrick O'Connor, another senior at Downers Grove South, Jake Suka, a senior at Hinsdale South, and Teddy Morissette, a sophomore at Downers Grove South. So the Mustangs really represented well in this achievement.
That's good.
The club achieved a top 20 state ranking for the first time in club history. made the Sweet 16 of Illinois State Tournament, and in league playoffs defeated the two-time defending champion Joliet Catholic Academy to reach the finals, where they faced off against the Fox Valley Hawks in a best-of-3 championship series. After splitting the first two games, the club battled at the Edge in Bensonville for the coveted Cougar Cup, which is awarded to the league championship and was awarded to our very own DuPage Stars on March 19th. Josh Smith opened the scoring, and Levi Bolnow from Lisle High School added the second period goal. Goalie Patrick O'Connor, in his final high school game, shut the door with a 29-save performance for a 2-0 shutout and the team's first championship. So congratulations to the DuPage Stars and all the team members from Downers Grove South and Downers Grove South High School, Downers Grove North and Downers Grove South High School. Congratulations to the champs, and I hear they're going to be appearing with the cup at some point at various points in town, so you might want to book your appearances to get photos with the coveted Cougar Cup. Commissioner Waldeck.
Mayor, quick comment before we adjourn. I
had one more thing, so go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I think you have the future as a sportscaster.
Well, now you want me to tell you stories about my days on WDGC 88.3 FM, but that's another story.
Motion to adjourn is all.
Now, hold on a second. One last thing. I did want to point out, for the more observant members of my colleagues up here, they've noticed that I was wearing a very special tie tonight. You notice this isn't just any tie, it says Classic Cinemas all over it. So I'm starting a new program. Any business in town that wants to let me borrow a tie to wear during a meeting, we're talking about economic development, promoting local sales tax. So lead by example. Visit the Tivoli, our historic Tivoli Theater here in Downers Grove. Willis and Shirley Johnson were nice enough to let me borrow this tie, so I promised I would wear it during a meeting. Of course, it's the one meeting they weren't here. The last two they were. So if you have ties, business ties, to support a local Downers Grove business, let me know. As former Commissioner Durkin would say, shop local, shop Downers Grove. And with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Thank you very much. We are adjourned. Good night.